Prologue. Cold Wire, 11. The fence cracked in excitement as he lit his cigarette, the smoke going through the wire without care. He drove into the clearing with the headlights off, as the haze parted before him. The air was wet that night, and clouds covered the sky. The night was illuminated by the blur of neon below it. His balaclava hung from his neck, and he exhaled the smoke, watching it go through the wire without care. He drove into the clearing with the headlights off as the haze parted before him. He ran over his list of assignments for the night. "Last time," he said, looking into his green eyes in the rearview mirror. "I swear. Last fucking time," he thought to himself. Wildlife was muted in the background. He could hear the familiar sounds of sirens in the distance buzzing. He unbuckled his seatbelt as the car came to a halt. The brakes didn't even work. Turning it off, he jumped out of the Jeep and headed towards the boot of it. The older model was most likely used during wartime. It had dents and deep scratches, and the tires were dirt-encrusted. A generator was hooked up to 5 rows of car batteries. Next to it was a briefcase glimmering silver in the moonlight. The dimness of the phone was his only light. Impressive, he thought to himself, feeling the static as the fence lit up with him. Getting closer. Checking into the app provided, he called his dispatcher. The phone rang for 3 beats before an answer. 11. Are you ready to go? The voice is direct and heavy with weight. Yes, sir, though it's different from the pictures you gave me in the dossier. He said so, connecting the cables to the positive and negative plugs. You have your orders. Complete them, and we will give you the cure. There's a car waiting for you in the building to your right across the field. The voice was monotone. The line went dead before he could even answer. Fucking bastard, he muttered to himself as he threw the cigarette into the glimmering electric fence. Inspecting the briefcase's contents, he discovered 2 Walther P99 handguns packed in black foam. There were also 2 different cartridges, one with normal bullets for one gun, and the other with various types of tranquilizers. He put a silencer on one and holstered them. Taking some electrical gloves out of one of his pockets, he lowered himself, connecting them to one of the transformers. He stepped back when he saw the coils begin to glow orange. Running his hand over his brown, slicked-back hair, he pulled the balaclava up again. Taking a few more steps back, he looked on from behind a tree a few hundred feet away. Sparks flew as the small explosion blew out the windows. He could feel the heat from where he stood, setting the car ablaze. Moving with one of the pistols aimed forward, he stepped through the mess that once used to be an electric fence. Lights began to illuminate the fields, and the distant hum of security drones flew across them. The fence surrounding the city went into emergency mode as he moved past a few factory spaces and into the backside of some semi-burned-down apartments. A chattering of radios could be heard in the air. There's a breach in one of the sectors. The radio cut in. Sergeant, there's a truck on fire and the gate is wide open, he overheard from atop the 2-story building as 3 military police patrolled below. He sat in a corner of the burnt apartment, looking around for the car that was supposed to be there. Pulling out the phone, he dialed the only number on it. Go ahead, 11. The voice was cold. I'm in the building. Where's the car? He asked quietly as search drones buzzed overhead, scanning the fields. What do you mean we had it delivered right before you got there? The voice responded. Give me a moment, he said. We'll locate it. The voice had some static to it. It's not here, he said, weighing his chances of taking it on foot. Bad luck. It was impounded under an hour ago. It's your choice to continue. The phone cut out again. It's not like I have much of a choice. I'm already here, guy. He cursed into the phone. There wasn't much to do about it. He would have to travel into the city and steal something if he wanted to get out. Traveling a few blocks, following the path on his holomap, he moved in and out of the empty building structures. The explosion served as a very well-placed distraction. The streets were semi-empty. It was around 3 a.m., and night shift workers were unloading pallets into a truck. He moved in and out of the amber light from the street lamps in the direction indicated by the map, noticing a few security guards huddled over their phones. A few lone cargo vans were lined up near the exit. He went around the bend to get a better view. Another security guard was smoking a cigarette and talking on the phone. The pistol held the tranks, and he stepped up to the man's neck, and freezing at the sight of the gleaming pistol as his consciousness faded to black. 11 moved him out of the way and began to change outfits. He was a couple of sizes too big. This badge will make it much more convenient, he thought, rubbing the ID card on the concrete to mask the picture. He managed to get into the building. The guards kept to their corners, and no one reported anything. He figured the emergency room would be the best place to get in once the door was opened. The building schematics showed him exactly the routes he needed to take. He was to head to radiology. I'm so confused now, he thought to himself. Why would they send an insert here of all places? He studied the map as a doctor and a nurse walked by. So she's not dating him anymore. I thought they were partnered, said the nurse. She's single now. You never know, laughed the doctor, looking in Hash 11's direction. Slow night, isn't it? The doctor waved at him, taking off his glasses and cleaning them with his lab coat. The way I like it, too bad the cafeteria is closed now, 11 remarked as he entered a lab space with the stolen ID card. The floors were bright white, and the halls were decorated with cartoons. The deeper he went into the building, the colder it was. He figured it would be best to stay in the shadows and away from open spaces with personnel. Using the stairwell, he was directed toward the lower levels. What could be there? Chemicals? Research data? He thought. He lingered a bit too long, and one of the doctors broke off and walked over to him from the front desk. This area is a quarantine zone for the R&D department, and it's after hours. Is there something going on? She looked at his scratched badge. Yes, we had a silent alarm go off. Is everything okay? He said. He was quick on his feet, cursing himself for missing a beat. Since when do you guys carry guns? She mocked. Not since that crazy guy with the knife in his shin last month, he awkwardly laughed. It happens, she said. You're welcome to check only the corridors. Just make sure to put the garments on. You're going to have to take that uniform off anyway because it's too baggy on you. She continued to gossip. Most likely about him now. His phone rang, startling him. You are to bring it to the designated location. I will personally meet you, said the deep voice. His mind raced. Could it be a doctor or a patient? He had never actually met the person he worked for. It was always a liaison. You need to give me more information now, he said. What the fuck is going on? He got louder than he should have. You have 5 minutes. We've hacked into the hospital systems. All doors will unlock and all alarms will go off. It's up to you to get out. The voice mused as the line went dead. As soon as he finished, he noticed personnel running back and forth behind him and over the PA systems. All sorts of emergency codes. His heart hammered in his chest as he began to run through the corridors, following the map's direction. Room 10, it said, pointing ahead. He was a few doors down when he noticed the name tags on the doors. Experiment 16, Experiment 15, and Experiment 11 stopped him because the name Matter was on the door. Was that his last name and designation? They must want some chemicals or something, he thought to himself. He looked through the small windows. The room was a dim, ambient red. The lights in the corridors were cut off. He heard rustling and looked behind him. A sudden impact knocked him to the ground. There was a man in military uniform holding a rifle. Who the fuck are you? The man roared. You're not supposed to be here, he said. He jumped from the floor and pushed the man as he fired close to his ear, the muzzle flash blinding the darkness and sending his train of thought into a belligerent haze. He assessed the situation, his ears ringing. It was dark, and the man punched him so hard that he lost his breath. He managed to force the gun from his grip. I need help. Send someone to R&D, he yelled into the radio. Hash 11 noticed the glimmer, and muscle memory acted before he even thought of anything. Sliding his hand into the handle of his silenced pistol, he heard 2 muffled shots and 1 loud one. All he could hear were wet sounds. The man was dead before he even hit the floor. He got up, holding his useless arm, and walked through the rest of the corridor. He faced the room the hollow map pointed to and tried to use his stolen ID, but nothing worked. He ripped off a piece of the clothes he was given, exposing the wound. The muscle of his forearm was stained red. Luckily, it went right through. The pain came as the numbness of the endorphins and adrenaline left. He was bleeding while the sounds still blared around him. He felt lightheaded and nauseous, throwing up what little he had inside. He tied a tourniquet using a piece of the garment, scrambling for a way to get in by kicking the door and shooting 3 bullets into the passkey lock. He had no idea what the password was. His holomap was turned off, and a holographic image of a silhouette appeared as he held the phone. He dropped it, not knowing what it was. Pick me up. I work with the boss, it said. He held it in his palm. Point me toward the door, it asked. Why did you shoot it? It mocked. You missed anyway, it said. What are you? He poked the phone with his thumb, and the hollow map reappeared. The latch turned, the lock whirred, the door opened, and a blast of freezing air assaulted him. He'd never done anything like this before. He had been in danger many times as a mercenary, but not this time. This was different. The room wasn't much bigger than a few feet. It was dark, but he stepped in, scanning with the pistol in hand. He put it back in the holster and looked at a file hanging from the door. It was filled with notes and codes. He didn't understand file number 10, which read, "No signs of progress or antibody production from the last failed experiment. If no improvements are shown, scrap the experiment and start over with experiment 11. He looked over, surprised by the light. A machine next to him turned on, and he heard the loud mechanical sounds of motors running. He walked over to it. It overtook him, losing all sense of time, space, and reason, anger, confusion, sadness, whatever it was. Specimen code, Mary Cosma vitals stable. Heart rate with slight palpitations, due to new vaccine and virus interactions, his shirt pocket phone said. He felt disgusted looking at the papers. They were experimenting on people. He looked behind him across the hall and saw Experiment 20. They had adults in there too. He returned her stare. She was terrified, and her teeth chattered. He took a blanket from the hanger and draped it over her. I'm here to help, he said, his breath freezing the air, and he could tell they'd been sedated for a long time. He wanted to help the others. He needed to, but 5 minutes wasn't enough time, and they may have killed them due to the infiltration. He tried to pull her, but she held her ground, shaking her head. He could see fear in her eyes. Sadness rolled over. Please let me help you, he said, holding out his only good hand as she sat upright. She shook her head again and pointed to her leg. It was shackled. He touched the cold wire leading to the ground. Will you really? She said with a weak voice. I promise I'll get you out of here. You have my word, said 11, hugging her. Wait, my friend next door. We have to help him too. Please, we talked through that crack in the wall, she sobbed, pointing to it, and he froze. Dave Matter was his son.